Design shapes the way you live. I'm Nico, an interior design expert focused on the connection between home and well-being. Using science, design, and professional expertise, I'll help you shape a space that elevates your mindset and enhances your well-being. Let's create space for better living, starting now. Welcome back to Your Home by Design. Today, we're marking our 50th episode. That's 50 conversations about creating homes that actually support your well-being and the life you want to live. In this episode, we're talking about the fight, the quiet tension in your home you might not even realize is draining your energy, whether it's visual clutter, awkward furniture layouts, or spaces that just don't serve your daily rhythms. I'm walking you through 5 often overlooked stress triggers in your home and how to design your way out of them. So let's turn the friction into beautiful home flow. So I think that there's always a fight within the home. There's always a sense of something has gone awry and then you're trying to get it back. And there's this tension, there's this fight to sort of almost control the spaces. We know how we want things to function. We know how we want things to more or less look. We know how we want to feel when we're in a room or doing something in a space. So there's this fight to either maintain that and guard that, or there's a fight to get it back to how you need it to be. Or even there's a fight in just simply evaluating that and saying something's wrong here. What do I do about it? And I think when we're in that place where we're fighting to decide what to do about it, that's where you might look to Pinterest or social media or magazines or whatever for that inspiration. And you're constantly looking to make it better. You're fighting for change in your space. So as we talk about today, sort of 5 things that are really secretly stressing you out, they may not be really obvious to you. You might go through your home and go through your space and not really recognize what it is exactly that's bothering you about your current space. So you might get fixated on, I just would rather a different look. So you think about the aesthetics, you think about how you'd prefer it to look compared to things that you've seen, instead of really stopping and thinking, what is the fight? What is going on here and why? So today we're going to just get into it. We're going to get into 5 things that could be secretly stressing you out, and then we will talk about what you can do about it. And I want to just share some design sort of tips and ways that we design spaces so that it alleviates and gets rid of that fight, or at least when that fight occurs, it helps you to get back on track. So we'll do that. But first, I just want to say that when I walk around my home, I would say there's a few areas where I experience that fight. And there are times where, especially if I'm in a rush, where I might not notice it right away. So I'm rushing and I'm feeling disorganized and we're trying to get out the door. And then I have to, afterwards, I think about, well, why did that occur? And obviously I don't always think about that, but as somebody who focuses on neuroaesthetics, I do tend to evaluate and edit my spaces and how I feel in them quite regularly. So I will often, if things have been, feeling a bit chaotic within the home, I'll say, okay, well, what is going on here? How is the home looking? How are we functioning in the home? Is everybody organized? Are there projects that are sort of on our mind that really need to happen in order for things to flow and function better? But, the fight for me often is areas within the home that start to pile up things. So, for instance, on our stairs going upstairs, if I'm wandering around the house and I see kids' toys or kids' things out, I will often pick them up and place them on the stairs. And if anyone out there that does the same, you hear me, right? Because in that moment, you're not going to go run up the stairs to take it to where it needs to go. So you place it on the stairs and the plan is that the next time you go up, you will carry the item or the things with you and put them where they need to be. I also ask my kids, if you see this or that on the stairs, take it up to your bedroom and put it away. So that's a fight area for me, because as I'm going upstairs, if I pass all of this stuff, it's not an enjoyable experience. I don't really want to have to think about it. I don't want to trip over it, all of those things. So that's definitely a fight spot for me. But when I start evaluating our home and I think, where's the tension? Where's the things that visually could be bothering me? Often it's those types of areas. It's the stairs or it's a counter that's becoming that catch-all for things. Because even if a space is designed perfectly, life happens, right? You may have the most architecturally stunning staircase, but if you have any of those piles on your stairs, then it can still cause you mental fatigue. It's like when you stay in a beautiful hotel and there's cohesion, the design is great, everything's been thought through, from the lighting to the linens to the drapery to the floors to the materials, and it's beautiful. And that beauty is carried through down the corridors, into the lobby, into the shared spaces and the amenities that it offers. But even if that's, it's beautiful, it doesn't have any of the life, right? I mean, you walk in with the suitcase. You don't bring a whole bunch of belongings with you. There's no additional things to visually clutter the space. So life doesn't really happen in a hotel. So you get to appreciate it from a design perspective. You get to appreciate it from an aesthetic experience. But it's the contention that happens. It's the fight that happens as life unfolds in your home. And that needs to be managed, and that needs to be something that you think about regularly. How is my home affecting me in these ways? What are the areas that are quietly stressing me out, quietly draining my energy, quietly frustrating me, quietly taking my time, so you need to be aware of these things. And when spaces become counterintuitive, that can defeat the whole purpose of what we want from our home. So for instance, if you want to feel very relaxed, and not just feel relaxed, you want to be relaxed in your home, yet it's disorganized, that's counterintuitive. If you want to feel energetic and really highly focused when you're using certain areas of your home, yet it's not set up in that way, you don't have adequate lighting to keep you alert, you don't have the right furniture, so your body's not responding. There's so many things that can be counterintuitive that are working against what you're trying to achieve, or just simply how you're wanting to use a space. And before we talk about, get into the 5 things, I just want to say that the most important thing before you even consider how you want a room to look, how you need it to function, just certain design aspects. The most important thing is for you to really understand and recognize what you actually need the room to do for you. If it's an area of the room, or if it's a whole room, or if it's a area of your house that you want to feel a certain way when you're in that space. If there's certain things in your life that you're trying to achieve, let's say you really would like to be highly focused and motivated when you wake up in the morning, or you really need to unwind and relax at night when you get home from work. Maybe you are studying, and so therefore you need certain things throughout your day that are going to keep you alert and able to read or write or whatever. So really looking at what you want out of your life, and then designing your spaces to support that. And that has to happen first, because if we're using our home as a tool for better living, that's the most important thing, is how do you want to live better? How do you want your life to change? What are the things that you're trying to achieve? Or who are you? What is your just day-to-day activities that you love to do, if you love to work out or if you love to read or, whatever, paint, whatever it is, you have to really start with asking the question, how do I need my space to be to support me? And you don't have to answer all of the design questions right away, because if we start with what do we need from our space, then we build it out from there. And then when you answer those questions, then it really, really limits what choices you have, which is a beautiful thing. When you start asking a lot of questions as a designer, when we sit down with a client, that's why we ask the questions. We ask the questions so that it gives us direction. It gives us something to focus on. We understand the importance of certain things. We understand really what direction to move in. But on the flip side, if we're being honest, it's actually narrowing the field, right? It's giving us that direction. It's pointing us to a clear destination. You're trying to gain this sort of awareness so that you make the right choices from a design perspective, so that it's just very customized and very personal to the person. But it also is narrowing that field, and it's giving you that direction, and it's eliminating a lot of other choices. So I think that that's really important. So when I say, don't get so fixated on just how you want it to look and your design and creating this beautiful space, you have to really dial that back and start asking those important questions for how you need that space to interact with. What reaction are you wanting from that space? How are you wanting to feel? How are you wanting to live? What are the things that you're wanting to do? And once you start doing that, then that's going to give you your North Star. That's going to narrow the field and really point you in the direction that you need to go with the design choices. Okay, so now let's talk about the 5 things that are secretly stressing you out. Now, I just grabbed 5. I think that these 5 are probably the top 5 things that most people experience. And the first one is visual clutter. Just like I talked about with the stairs and those sort of like pain points, that fight that you go through, that usually comes down to some kind of clutter, right? I mean, we all experience it. We live in our homes. I mentioned this already, but life happens, and we have to always try to reset our spaces, or get them back to where they need to be, or edit them in order to change them so that they work better for us in reducing that clutter and helping things go back to where they belong. But why is clutter so stressful? Well, it really does overstimulate your brain. It reduces your focus, and it causes a sense of overwhelm. When you're walking into a room, you're seeing a lot more than you're actually consciously perceiving, right? So when you walk into a room, you may not be thinking about all of the things that you're actually paying attention to. It's not a conscious thought, but you are noticing things. And that's where the overwhelm comes in, because that noticing when there is clutter, it really does deplete us in some ways. So just be mindful of that when you have visual clutter, that it's actually subconsciously overwhelming you and overstimulating your brain, okay? And if you live in a space that's more open concept, I always say that if you have open concept, you need more closed storage, because you need places for things to go. Unless you're a minimalist and you really don't have very much stuff, then, that's another thing. But if you've got open concept and you do have things and, life happens, then you definitely should look at getting more closed storage and really thinking about where things can go. If you've got a space that needs to be, it needs to act as 2 or 3 different functions. It's your living room. It's also maybe a playroom, or, a place that you unwind. You have to be thinking about, where can you put things away? How can you hide things or change up the space in order to function how you need it to without feeling cluttered? And clutter, when we look at clutter, I think often people think clutter is just physical objects. It's just that excess of things, the books, the paperwork, the keys, the cords, what else? The toys, all of those extra things. But clutter also can just be like visual, right? It's like aesthetic clutter. Is there too many textures, too many colors, too many styles, just too much stuff in general? I think when we look at, say, like an eclectic design style, if you're somebody who loves more sort of eclectic living, that's where intentionality has to come in, because you have to be very selective on what collective stuff you're bringing. Because if you are like, an eclectic room can look beautifully styled. It can look from an interior design perspective, it can be an amazingly designed space. But there has to be that intentionality. There has to be a reason for the things, and things can still play off of one another. So just be mindful of that. Mindful that your choices for the design can actually be causing you that sense of visual clutter. So, and how would you alleviate that visual clutter? Well, the first thing I would say is that to regularly walk through your spaces and remove the things that don't belong. Get rid of the stuff that doesn't belong, and actually set aside time to put things away. I was talking to a friend a while ago who said that every day they spend about 10 or 15 minutes just walking around their home and putting things back to where they belong, so that every night when they go to bed, their spaces feel much, much tidier. So, and really 15 minutes to do this isn't a big deal. We can all find 15 minutes in our day. It's just saying, this is what I'm going to do for 15 minutes each and every day to make sure that things have been put back to where they belong. It also allows us to say, whoa, I keep finding these types of things in this room. And then you ask the question, why is that? Well, it could be that the purpose of the room needs to change. The way you're using that space might have shifted. And now you need to evaluate whether something needs to happen in that room. Maybe you need to change the layout. Maybe you need to change how you're using that space, or you need to introduce more closed storage in that space so that those things can go somewhere. But doing this also means that you get to evaluate your home, evaluate the design, evaluate how you are using this space each and every day. I know for myself right now, an area in our kitchen where it's that catch-all, and I've talked about it before, but we come in and stuff just gets put on this like 4-foot run of our countertop, and it drives me crazy. But I'm starting to look at, okay, we've got the drawers underneath there, that all of this stuff is really supposed to go. We've got a desk in another room, a large sort of millwork desk in another room. And that's sort of where a lot of the stuff that's on that countertop is meant to live. So it's looking at what habits need to change in order for things to move, or what things need to change within the drawers in order for those things to be put away more easily. So you really get to evaluate your home. And that's really important, because when we're in a rush, or when we're just using our home and living life in our spaces, that's an indicator in terms of how that needs to function and how that needs to look, right? So make sure that as you're going through and you're doing this like 15-minute a day declutter, that you're addressing the aesthetics of the space as well. The second thing that could be stressing you out is your furniture placement. Furniture that doesn't fit and doesn't flow in the space can be causing you to feel tension and disconnected from your room. You might have difficulty relaxing in the space. It could actually be causing you physical discomfort, which is just going to also lead to mental tension. Look at your furniture layouts. And I mean, one of the things I want to say, and I'm sure you've experienced when you sit down in a space that just feels right. Maybe it's a chair that's angled in just a way that you can see out a window, and there's a table there at the perfect spot for your drink. And it just feels so intentional. There's this sort of anchored feeling to a room that's been well thought out with the furniture layout. And that's what you want to achieve in your space is you want the furniture to feel anchored. You don't want it to overwhelm the room. You don't want it to underwhelm the room. You need balance in a space in order for it to feel very intentional. And the other thing that you want to make sure of is that your furniture isn't blocking the sense of openness, that feeling of openness. So the ease as you walk through the space, is there enough room around your furniture to get through, pass by? When you're having conversation with people in the room, does it feel easy? Does it feel like, you're not having to strain? Because one of the things with bad furniture placement is that it can actually cause a sense of awkwardness to the space. So social interactions can actually feel awkward. So for instance, if you're sitting across from somebody and you're having to sort of lean forward as you're talking, like body language says a lot. So if you're sitting with somebody in a space, just pay attention to where their body is angling, what their body's doing. Is it coming towards you, which would indicate that maybe your furniture needs to be brought closer together. So just really focusing on these sorts of things. Furniture is so key in how you create zones in a room. And when that's off, it can really make a space feel off. If you find that you don't want to spend time in a room, it could be that the furniture placement is wrong or the scale of the furniture is wrong. There's something that's causing you to want to avoid going into that space. And pay attention to the heights of your furniture, your seat heights. Do your seat heights work well with each other? You don't want a really low sofa and then a chair next to it that's got like 3 inches on it. You need things to all be cohesive in that way. And that's the same for your coffee tables and your side tables. Your coffee tables should be around the same level as the top of the couch cushions. And your end tables should be around the same as the sofa arms. So things are easy to get to on those tables. And one of the things that people tend to do is, in order to achieve a sense of space in the room, they push all of their furniture against the walls. And I think that that's like an easy go-to for a lot of people, but it really, really helps to also provide that sense of spaciousness when things are not on the walls. So maybe bring the sofa off of the wall and have it come closer to the fireplace, which is going to create a really cozy and inviting conversation area. And scale. I know I mentioned scale, but if you've got like a really oversized, heavy weighted looking sofa and then juxtaposed it is a very small, tiny little chair that's got tall legs and you can see under it, the weight of that just doesn't work. So you have to look at either changing up the chair so that it's a little heavier visually, or maybe you can balance it by adding a heavier weighted table beside the chair, something so you're creating a grouping with the chair and the table that gives it a little bit more visual weight. So getting creative in that way, but making sure that that balance in the space is appointed properly. One of the hardest furniture layouts is dealing with a very long and narrow room, especially if there's doors going into it. I recently had a conversation with my sister-in-law about when a room is small and there's more than 1 or 2 doors going into it. Our TV room actually has 3 doors, and one of them is a sliding door going out into the back garden, and then one is going into a bathroom and the other is going into a hallway. And it is one of the most challenging rooms to place furniture in, because each door is going to dictate where the flow of the room is, where the foot traffic needs to go. So that circulation zone. So if you do have a room that's got two or more doors, what you want to do is almost imagine drawing a rectangle on a piece of paper and then make a notation where those doors are, and then draw arrows from each door. Basically what it's doing is it's showing what the pattern of traffic is. And And if you can draw lines connecting each doors, so showing the pattern, then in between where those connection points are is where you can place furniture and where you can focus certain things. But that really, the more doors you have, the more limiting that can be in terms of the size of things and the options for where things go. I hope that makes sense, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm saying. The other thing is with furniture placement is making sure that if you're using a rug, that the rug is an adequate size. Again, you want it to anchor the space, and rugs make one of the best conversation zones in a room. So if you've got one rug that's unifying all of the chairs, and then that creates this almost like little conversation hug, if you will. It's like the arms that are stretching around everything, so you're really able to designate that this is a conversation area, which is just going to help make that space feel a little bit more inviting. And when you're sitting there, if you're entertaining with other people, they're going to get that sense of that as well. And I just want to say that this is what I love about design. This is what I love about neuroaesthetics, is how you can create feelings in people by simply making design choices, by making the right design choices to get that reaction from people. And when you can really start to customize that and choose how you want that reaction to be, and then make those design choices to support those reactions, that's where you're really using your home as a tool. So number 3 is neglected spaces, neglected areas of the home, also known as dead zones. So if there's ever anywhere in your home, say you've got like a bay window, or you've got a little nook somewhere within the home that isn't being used, and you walk by it and it just looks like almost either forgotten or overlooked, or maybe you have something there, but it just has been neglected. And these sorts of areas really do affect us, and they make us feel like it's incomplete, that there's something that was meant to happen there that didn't. And it's also just the use of intentionality. Again, if you have an area like a little nook that you could create, say like a little floating desk or a little reading nook, or just changing it and transforming it into something that's really useful, even if it's not just an everyday use. Maybe it's a once in a while use, or maybe it's just aesthetically, like visually pleasing. Utilizing these areas is really important because, again, it's just, it brings the sense of intentionality to an overlooked area. Now, you want to be careful not to clutter things. So if it's a little dead zone in a space that's overly cluttered, then you might want to look at simplifying some of the other things within the room and then making use of this little nook or whatever it may be. But yeah, just really addressing these sort of neglected areas in the home. And even when we're talking about neglect, it could be something that you did set up. Maybe you have a little table with a vase and a plant on it just in this perfect spot under the window, but you haven't really done anything with it in a while, or you've piled a few things on the table that shouldn't be there, or you haven't changed the plant, or you haven't dusted, or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a simple shift that needs to occur in order for that space to not feel neglected anymore. So really looking at those areas in your home, just a little overlooked corner, maybe it, and a little bit of empty space. I think empty space is important. It gives our eyes rest as it looks around the room and is trying to make sense of our spaces and all of the objects and the things within it. But when you can utilize an area that's going to be really impactful, it could even be a focal point in a room, or something that maybe you haven't overlooked. You haven't even thought about how you can make this little neglected corner or dead zone something beautiful. Then take that into account and look at ways that you can carve out some meaning and aesthetic interest into spaces that you perhaps have overlooked. And number 4 is poorly designed lighting. And this is something that if you have an intended use for a room and the lighting is not adequate for what you need it for, then that is going to quietly stress you out. That may not even be a conscious thought. If you have to strain while you're in that room, then that's problematic. That's going to give you, a certain level of stress, right? So making sure that your lighting is properly done, and lighting is such a huge tool for design in really creating ambiance and really highlighting certain things in a room. I always find it interesting if a room is underlit, the way that we engage with our rooms and how that impacts our senses when we're in a space. Well, if you can't see what's in a room, then you're not engaging with it. You're not seeing the things. So that can be the texture, the color, the views to the outside, whether you're just trying to read the light that's being cast onto the book. That could be even just wood tones in a space. When it's a dimly lit room, you're not seeing the tones as well. So making sure that you're utilizing your light for doing what it's meant to do, which is illuminate things, so that you can engage with the things in the right ways. Light also really affects our circadian rhythms. Lighting is so important when we talk about our day-to-day living, right? I mean, getting outside in natural light resets our circadian rhythms if we can do that earlier enough in the day. When we travel and we're in different time zones, that affects our circadian rhythms. So that's why it's super challenging when we get home and we're jet lagged, to get back into that rhythm. And it often takes time. Our body's like kind of recalibrating for being home or being away. So lighting is such a huge thing. And I talk about spectrally optimized lighting because this is actual lighting that can affect our circadian rhythms. When you look at incorporating lighting that's either warm or cool in a space, the warmer it is, so that's just the temperature, the bulb color. If it's really warm, that is going to impact you in a way of creating ambiance, but it's not actually going to affect you in a biological way. It's not going to affect your circadian rhythms properly. So utilizing light to enhance mood and to enhance ambiance is certainly a tool. This can be done with whiter lights or so cooler lighting versus warmer lighting, or warmer lighting versus cooler lighting. But making sure that if you're really wanting to impact your circadian rhythms, if you're like, you know what, I just want to be ready for bed, or I want to be ready for my day, utilizing bulbs that do that is really important. But yes, bad lighting can give you a sense of tension. It can cause fatigue. So using lighting as a tool to really enhance a room is important. And you can do this with layering lighting. So different levels of light. If you have lighting that's closer to the ground, it's giving a really nice glow. If you've got your lighting that is on tables, like table lamps or task lighting, that kind of thing. Or if you have ceiling lighting and overhead lighting in some ways, ambient lighting. So is there uplighting? Do you have some lights on your artwork? Or if you've got any sort of interesting details architecturally, do you have lights that you can cast on that to really amplify that and make it more visually interesting at certain times of the day? Dimmers are an amazing way to just be able to control your light levels and to enhance a mood. So you can imagine if you want to just wind down and rest in a space and you have dimmers, that immediately gives you that ability to be able to dim down your lights, light some candles, put some music on. Right away, that's changing that atmosphere of the room. Whereas if you walk into that room and you want to relax and you don't have the ability to dim down that light, that's going to change how you feel in the space at that time. So that can really stress you out if you want to use that space as one to relax, yet you can't control the light levels in that room. So lighting is key. And number 5, the last point that I'm going to talk about today, but continuity. Now, this one is an interesting one. I love this one because when we talk about continuity in design, in interior design, we can also say that it's something called visual flow. It's cohesiveness that happens, this sort of cohesion that can move from one space to the next. And this one, when you talk about a home that's been well designed. When you talk about spaces that really flow and when a home feels really good, and when we try to unpack what that is, in a lot of cases, it comes down to a sense of continuity. And you may have heard the word like visual harmony, flow. These are all things that are similar to that. But I love using the word continuity because when you look at what's repeating throughout the home, and this is if you're creating that sense of flow, we can say it's like if a home is open plan, right? Back to an open plan example. If a home is open plan, then you are visually able to see how things flow, how things continue from room to room. And what is that? That's typically, the casing around the doors, the baseboards, the crown molding, if there is crown molding, the type of ceiling lighting, if there's recessed lighting, that is something that's going to continue from room to room. The colors aren't really broken up. Usually if it's open plan, you're going to have furniture that speaks to the other furniture in the adjacent room because you can see through it. So you might be seeing matching wood tones. You might be seeing, if it's open plan, it literally might be the same room, right? So there's no break. It's very obvious visually that you can see what is flowing and what's continuing from space to space. If you put walls up and doors up now so that it's not an open plan, when you walk from room to room, even though you're not consciously seeing these connections, your body's responding to those connections. So that's going to give you the feeling that this all makes sense, that the design choices were almost made together, right? There's things that are repeating from room to room so that no matter where you are in the home, you're going to understand the home that you're in. You're going to have a sense of place. So things are going to make sense to you visually. And this is really important. And I think rooms don't have to be the same. So very often people tend to gravitate towards one particular style, and that can be furniture color, that can be wood tone, that can be paint, that can be certain architectural details. Whatever it is, people tend to gravitate towards one thing. And often it's not because that's just what they love. It's because they feel that that's what's safe, right? And I want to encourage you that things don't need to be matchy and you don't need to play it safe. But when you're trying to alleviate some of that, the things that might be stressing you out in your home is when there isn't enough cohesion. So playing it safe is one thing versus really being selective on what you carry through from room to room. So things can be different. You can have different types of furniture, different wall colors, different vibes in each room. You can have different types of lighting. You can have different types of art. The rooms itself don't need to be a direct replica of one another. But what there needs to be is a thread. There needs to be some common thread that moves throughout the home. And that thread doesn't have to be huge. It can be a minor thread. So some of these things that, that could be stressing you out a little bit if there isn't a continuity is flooring. Your flooring isn't flowing from one room to the other. Creating that sense of continuity, you can utilize the same flooring throughout. So no matter what the wall color is, no matter what the art styles are or whatever, and from room to room, there's that one consistent floor that goes from room to room. You can look at doing things like metals throughout. So for instance, if your lighting is gold, let's say you light gold metal on your light fixture in your dining room. So look to other areas. How can you bring gold throughout the home? You don't have to have it in your face shiny gold in every room, but it can have a patina. One room could have a hammered gold. One room could have a brushed gold, so playing on the different types. So you're still in the same gold family, but you're switching up how that reads, but there's a continuity through that space. So your hardware on your doors, your door handles, can you change those out to match your cabinetry in your kitchen, your lighting in the kitchen, your lighting in your dining room, your lighting in your bathroom? Surely it doesn't all have to be the same, but like I said, if we think about that thread that's pulling through, if you look at some of the most well-designed spaces, you're going to see that continuity. And these are the things that you're going to see. You're going to see the flooring running throughout. You're going to see probably the finishes on the metal very similar throughout the home. If there's type of trim detail or wood paneling on the walls, you might see that running throughout, or at least being repeated in a few areas of the home. So if you've got crown moldings, is the crown the same throughout the home? If you've got a certain size of baseboard, is that base the same throughout the home? Really looking for those areas that are going to just alleviate a bit of that visual stress that you're experiencing if things feel too cut up, right? Because that's the sort of the contrast to this, is that when you don't have that continuity going through, you're going to get a sense that like things are really disconnected, and you want your home to feel connected, even though it's not the same room to room. Functions are different. The look can be different, but there is that thread of continuity going through each space. And one last little thing I just want to say in relation to continuity recently for us, just to share an example, is we painted our front and back decks. Now, the color I chose, of course, had to work with the exterior color of the house and certain fixed elements that are going on outside. But I also wanted it to relate a little bit more to what's going on inside. So it's sort of like a warm gray, beige that we painted the decks. And I wanted it to speak to the tones that we've got inside, because when you're in our living room and our dining room and you're standing in our kitchen, visually you are connected to the outside. And I really wanted that connection to be reinforced with some of the tones, so that especially right now, it's the summer, we have our doors open a lot more. So that connection is even more important. But you can do this kind of thing with even, if you have planters, even if you have a small balcony that you're looking out onto and it's got planters with flowers or greenery, think about the material that you're using for the planters. Is it a ceramic? What color is the ceramic? Can you bring a similar, if not the same, planter inside so that there's continuity as you're inside versus outside? Or maybe you plant some flowers, some cut flowers that you can then put in a vase inside, so that as you're sitting in your living room and you have a view to your garden, there's that continuity happening with what's growing in the garden to what's being displayed in your living room. Recently, I saw a house not too far from us that had these oversized, beautiful baskets on either side of their garage. These basket planters flanked the garage, and they had these beautiful flowers coming out, and they just gorgeous flowers. And then you could sort of see inside one of the windows, and they had used a planter that was similar on the inside. And I just love that, because right away, it's saying there's no break between what's happening outside and what's happening inside. And I think often we look at our inside spaces as one thing and then our outside spaces as something else. But if we can try to repeat materials, so whether that's the type of wood in the furniture outside, similar to the wood inside, or like I mentioned, the planters or the plants, like some way to visually connect them and have that continuity going through to the back, as the backyard or the outside spaces as well. Thanks for tuning in to this special 50th episode of Your Home by Design. If today's conversation helped you see your home with fresh eyes, I'd love for you to share this episode with a friend and follow the show so you never miss an insight that could transform your space and your life. And if you're ready to go deeper, grab one of our free guides or join the waitlist for the Create Space digital course at yourpero.com. Your home can be more than beautiful. It can be a tool for better living. Thanks so much for listening today. If you found this episode helpful, the best way to support the show is to follow along and share it with someone who'd love it too. And if you'd like to go a step further, you can become one of our Better Living backers. It's a small monthly contribution that helps keep the show going. And as a thank you, I'll send you a personal note along with a 15% discount for the Create Space course when it launches. You can find the support the show link right in the show notes. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for creating space with me.